Hey, what's up? Welcome back. Thanks for joining me. I don't do a lot of these. I usually do reviews. We talk Oscars or we talk Emmys. I do a top five. I don't usually just talk, but there's a SAG strike and a Writers Guild strike at the same time. And there are a lot of trolls online that are really upset because they're not getting their shows. And they think that the actors are being whiny bitches because they make a lot of money. And that's just not true. So if you've stumbled upon my channel, I'm John Stark from MacMovieGuy.com. I'm a blind film critic, so uh, go with go with that. There's your information as to who I am. If you want to click subscribe, fine. I don't think this video is gonna gain me subscribers, but we'll talk about it. So I support the Writers Guild strike and SAG strike. I have made some jokes in some of my reviews. As long as the writers strike has been around, when I find a movie I don't like, I'm like, that writer can stay on strike. It's just kind of a way of me pointing out that I don't think that was a good writer. It's like, we don't need to keep hiring him. But the truth of the story is that the writers frequently have little to no power, most of them. There's like a top percentage of writers, they're usually writer directors, people with Oscars, that they have a little bit more control over their projects. Um, and they don't get a lot of the nonsense coming down from the studios where a lot of people who aren't really creatives feel like they want to be creatives and they keep passing down notes, and writers constantly have to keep changing stories. um, I know back when Kevin Smith's Superman was in production, he mentioned his frustration, and one of the reasons why that project never happened um, had a lot to do with the fact why it ended up dying was studio interference. You know, he was ready to make the film, and then like a studio head was like, why don't we have Superman fighting a giant spider?" And Kevin Smith was like, "Why?" Like, it's like, I have a film written that has like a clear plot. What the You want me to just add a giant spider fight for no reason? you know? So, and that's a story that he's talked about a couple times. He's just baffled, and he gets turned off by working with people like that. Why Kevin Smith likes to maintain so much control over the projects that he makes, whether it's good or bad. At least it lives and dies on him, and it's not somebody else making decisions for him, and then it's his name that's out there. Because the truth is, somebody like David Zaslav makes a lot of creative decisions on a lot of projects, but we end up frequently blaming directors and writers, actors, producers. But it's somebody, up above that said, why don't we do this? Why don't we do this? Why don't we have this in there? I'm sure that Andy Muschietti, I don't know, the director of The Flash, I'm sure it wasn't his. I'm sure he wasn't sitting at home going, it would be really dope is if I had George Reeves in my Flash movie. I'm sure somebody else along the way was like, what we should do is we should use George Reeves's likeness, because I'm sure that's what fans want, is to resurrect the guy who killed himself because he died because he could only play Superman and nobody would cast him in anything else anymore, so he committed suicide. That's a lovely memory for all of us to have. Um, it's just that kind of like tone deaf response to things that I can tell are studio interfering. Sometimes I don't think studios are interfering in like independent film, because usually independent film just, you kind of buy it as is. You don't really have thoughts on the script. So it just depends. But writers do go through a lot. But that's not the big reason why I wanted to talk today. I did want to include some stuff about how I support the writers and why I support the writers. And I know the writers go through a lot of stuff. They're also, usually really underpaid. The studios have talked a lot about how They have absolutely no intention of negotiating with the writers um, about uh, who are striking not just to make more money, not the royalties of streaming, because the atmosphere has changed so much in Hollywood where most of the stuff that they make are going to streaming, but they haven't really negotiated proper contracts to reflect how they get paid from streaming. Um, Residuals. Back in the day, their stuff was based on syndication and DVD sales, and a lot of that stuff has just changed. People don't buy DVDs anymore. Stuff doesn't go into syndication anymore. It's all on streaming. So, of course, these people want to renegotiate their contracts to reflect where people are actually watching things. And the studios don't want to do that. David Zaslav wants to go on making $140 million a year. That's his salary. By the way, when he goes out there and talks down to all these people, why don't you start Googling what some of these people make per year, and you'll find out how much they make per year and what their net worth is. And then, I don't know, Google one of the writers from like your favorite TV show and find out what he makes per year. They want them to go homeless. That's been an actual statement that had been put out, that they hope that's their end game, is that they think that if the writers lose their homes, that the writers will just come back begging to the table, and then they won't have to budge. The other problem is AI, and this is the problem that stretches from both the Writers Guild into SAG, and the use of AI. Obviously, with writers, they don't want it to be credited. They don't want AI technology to be used as a credited screenwriter. And more importantly, they also don't want somebody like David Zaslav to start using ChatGPT to write essentially treatments so that he gets a story by credit. And then he ends up hiring somebody to do an adaptation on his story by, thereby diluting the work that the writer has done, and the writer is now doing a treatment to something that an AI technology wrote. It's bad enough that we have so many sequels and comic book adaptations that they're already adapting so many different things, but to think that things that would have normally been an original concept came up with AI, you can just type it into AI. They're trying to make sure that there's a system in place that prevents that from happening, to where maybe it can be used as a tool, but it cannot be used to change the scope of the entire landscape of Hollywood. It's very disconcerting to know that studio heads are fighting against this, that they want this sort of unparalleled use of AI, because at some point it means there may not be writers. There may just be AI. If they don't do something now, AI technology may take over and there may not be writers. Everything may be written by AI at some point. As AI continues to develop, it's already writing I work in a school, and people are already using it to write beautiful essays. Well, if they can use it to write beautiful essays, eventually they'll be able to use it to write novels. They'll be able to write poems. They'll be able to write screenplays. They'll be able to write TV show episodes. Just all sorts of things, just by typing in a few keywords into a chat GPT and just get it out there. It is very Orwellian. I'll use that term. Orwellian in that regard, that we are moving away from humans into a Skynet type of world, and it's all cost cutting. It's all so that the studio heads who really don't do anything and make tons of money can continue to make more money, and then they can complain that these people are greedy. They complain that the writers and the actors are greedy. I can tell you that it's 160,000 members of the Screen Actors Guild, and I see a whole lot of people online who are like, the actors are being greedy. They just want more money. They're already overpaid as it is. Okay, so you know what Tom Cruise makes. I want you to name. I want you to name 1,000 actors. I want you to name 10,000 actors. I want you to name 50,000 actors. And I want them all to make over $1 million. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think you can do any of those. I don't think you can find actors who make, who regularly their salary is over $1 million. So to use the couple people at the top who have what we call star power, who anchor movies and vehicles, um, and to say that they're ruining everything because they're being greedy and they want more money. I promise you, Tom Cruise is not the one leading this strike so that he can make more money on the next Mission Impossible film. He already gets a lot from producer credits. As a matter of fact, most of the actors are smart enough to know that the money is on the back end because they believe in themselves and they believe that if they can get sort of a normal upfront asking price, they don't need to go too high, and then they get a producer credit which allows them to get a certain amount of money on the back end, and that way if the movie becomes profitable, which generally these films do when they make like $1 billion at the box office, they get a percentage of the profits. So that's how they end up making more money. It's not because they're demanding like $80 million to do the next Mission Impossible film. So let's just dispel that rumor real fast. But there are a lot of hardworking members of SAG that they don't work constantly. You know, I mean, they're fighting to get into little films, or they're getting maybe like a couple episodes on one TV series, or maybe they get an independent film, or maybe they're atmosphere. Maybe they're basically background talent, day players, and they're hoping to one day get their way up into the next level. And the really chilling thing that the studios are fighting for is, and the thing that luckily these big name actors have said fuck no, is the use of AI scanning. They want to scan background actors and own their likeness in perpetuity, which means the end of acting. Basically, because a lot of people start off in background talent. They start off playing somebody sitting in the back of a courtroom. They start off playing a hostage in a bank. They start off playing just somebody behind somebody, a checkout cashier in a store, somebody shopping in a store. Just all these sort of people who mull about their daily lives while the lead characters do the kinds of things that they need to do. It's really fun because if you go back through and you look through some of your earlier films, you'll see people like that. You'll be like, oh, I didn't know so and so was in this. Oh, look, it's so and so, and they're checking out this character. You know, it's, you just see their faces pop up. I don't see them anymore. It's really hard for me now as a blind person, but when I could see, that was always really fun to watch an older film and to be like, wow, they did this film before they were famous. I had no idea. And you see all these actors that were in atmosphere. All of those actors' careers, if we had this years ago, all those films wouldn't exist. Chris Stuckman, who gave an excellent example of Matt Damon and Ben Affleck being in Field of Dreams, they were background actors in Field of Dreams. If the studio had scanned them and owned their likeness for Field of Dreams in perpetuity, that means that any film that those two tried to do afterwards, they the somebody would have owned them and been able to step in and said, hold on, we own the rights to those guys, you can't use them, we're using them over here in this film instead. It actually prevents them from getting further work. They can't they probably would have never gone on to do the films that they did. They never would have finally broken out of background work. And Ben Affleck did like an after school special. They both ended up in School Ties, you know, long before they ever got to Good Will Hunting and won an Oscar and got Robin Williams his Best Supporting Actor Oscar. So, I mean, like the whole thing, to think of the fact that those people never existed and Project Greenlight never would have been a thing, and all the things that they've created since then would have never happened if somebody had owned their likeness and then told them anytime after that that, oh, sorry, we can't use you because this studio owns your likeness. Uh, Go have fun working somewhere else. It kills the careers of all these up and coming actors, because these up and coming actors have to start somewhere. Very few people ever walk straight into a lead role in a movie. Very few people are like discovered on the street and are like, oh my god, we need you to be the undiscovered talent in the lead of this film, so they get to jump and surpass. A lot of these people are pulled up. You know, there are a lot of character actors who kind of hang around in the background for a while, and then they start getting speaking lines, and then we start realizing how great they are, and they kind of float around as character actors in supporting roles and things. Maybe they never reach lead status, but they're that guy who you've seen in 1,000 different things. Um, we end that. We get rid of that. Those people become AI. It's the scariest proposition I think the studios have made. So if I have to choose between SAG and Writers Guild and the prospect of not having original work being created until such time that the strike resumes in their favor, I don't care how long the strike goes. By all means, SAG and Writers Guild, keep striking. If this is 5 years from now and we still don't have new product, I'm good with that. Because the proposition that these studio heads want, and the fact that somebody like Bob Iger says that SAG and Writers Guild are being, that their demands are too high, fuck you. Fuck you with your AI demands. Like, get out of here. Fuck you, Bob Iger. David Zaslav, these guys that are going on the offensive and they're trying to be like they're wounded warriors or something. They're not wounded warriors. They make millions of dollars a year themselves, and they have stock options, you know, and they're stupid rich themselves, and then they turn around to other people and they try to point out the wealthy actors, and they're like, see, so and so just wants more money, and it's like, what the fuck did you make last year? You know, like, I mean, there's people all over the internet making videos just blasting Warner Brothers, but David Zaslav made $140 million. For what? You know? I mean, did The Flash cross 100 million yet at the box office? I know Shazam didn't. So, maybe he's a little overpaid. You know, if we're worried about, you know, cost cutting measures, maybe we could just take a little bit from David Zaslav. I think that might be nice. So, yeah. What exactly do these people do that they need to earn $140 million a year for? What is so hard about his job that we need to pay him $140 million a year? Let's talk about that. Like, what does he do that requires $140 million? Well, he runs a company? Bullshit. He has a whole bunch of people underneath them that all run different chairmans and operations. He's the centerpiece of a whole bunch of people who likely work a lot harder than he does, and he just kind of tells them where to go and what to do, and he makes decisions. He sits at a chair and he goes, I feel the winds are moving this way today, so this is what we're going to do. Yeah, it's not. He does not make. There's no way he does enough work to warrant $140 million per year. It's funny that there are so many people who are slogging at the bottom to try to make ends meet, and he stands there boldly saying that people are being too demanding. I'm sorry, but the friends that I know in SAG are struggling. You know, obviously I don't know any famous people. I can't say that I'm best friends with like Matthew McConaughey, you know. But I do know members of SAG, and they're not wealthy. Some of them get by. I mean, like, maybe they worked with on enough things that maybe they have a house by now. I have a friend that's a recurring character on Outer Banks. I think he makes enough money to have a house. He's not even a series regular, though. He's just recurring on Outer Banks. So, Yeah, I mean, some people. I have a friend who was in the Joker. I'm sure she got a nice paycheck from that. She was featured in the Joker, or Joker, I should just say, Joker. Um, so, I mean, I know people who have been in films, and I know people who have been essentially background talent, and and they're working their way through, and they get roles, and they get offered maybe an episode of a TV show, but they're not like a regular, but they're really excited because they're like, oh my God, I'm doing an episode of Night Court, you know, and they come in and they get to do their episode. And these people are there working, and they bounce around from show to show or to movie or whatever. Maybe they do a commercial in between, and these people are not rich, and they make up a large majority percentage of the Screen Actors Guild. So it's very nice that people like Tom Cruise and all the others who do have the money and the ability to go on strike because they can survive are willing to do so, to stand up for the lower actors, because at the end of the day, it's the lower tiered levels in SAG that are going to be hurt the most by the decisions that the studios are making, not the top level. Strike or no strike, you're right. Tom Cruise will be fine. Tom Cruise has enough money. He could stop acting right now, and he could go buy an island, and he could live there, and he doesn't need to do anything else. No, he doesn't even need to finish Dead Reckoning. He could just go be a part of somewhere else. But that's that's not everybody, and that's definitely not the people who the studios are trying to erase by scanning them and using them in perpetuity without giving them any sort of residuals for all the projects that they use. Imagine showing up to be a day player because you're like, oh, I'm really excited, and I have the opportunity to be in the background for the Avengers. And you're like, oh my God, this is great. I'm a huge comic book fan, and I can't believe they're shooting here. I can't believe I get to be in the background. Suddenly they scan you, and like you keep seeing your face popping up in all these fucking movies later on. You're like, I wasn't in that movie. What the fuck am I doing in this movie? I didn't shoot that. You know, you just keep popping up in other movies, and you're like, I'm not making any money from this. You know, I made $300 for a day shoot, and I've been in 20 movies since then. Like, that's the reality. That's what they're trying to do. So don't let the studios fool you, and stop going online and chastising SAG and Writers Guild for striking, because they're actually striking for a really good reason. It's not all about the money. A lot of it has to do with how these studios intend to use AI to essentially wipe people out of their jobs. So, anyway, I stand with SAG and I stand with Writers Guild. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And please, on your social media platforms, stop the nonsense of the anti-SAG, anti-Writers Guild, and just put that to rest, because we don't need that. Support the talent that creates the art that you love. That's it. It's really that simple. So that's it for me. I'll see you guys on the other side.